Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Survivor Girl podcast. My name is Alice, aka the Survivor Girl, and today I am joined by the one and only Johnathan. Johnathan, how are you doing today?
Hello. I'm doing all right. It's so good to talk to you. I'm honored to be here.
And I'm so happy to have you. Johnathan has an incredible story of survivorship that everyone absolutely needs to hear. So, with that said, let's get started. So, Jonathan, we're going to go back in time. We're going to go all the way back to the beginning of your journey. So, what led you initially to go to the doctor? What was going on that had you concerned?
Yeah, so it was, and thank you again for having me and for asking these questions. This is something that way more people need to be talking about, and cancer is just such a common ailment that it doesn't make any sense for it to be taboo. So I'm happy that you're asking these questions. So I was 21 years old, my last semester of college in living in Philadelphia. I was attending Temple University, and I developed a cough, a high-pitched, sort of unproductive cough, they say, no phlegm or anything. And I noticed that I was getting night sweats. I was waking up in the middle of the night just soaking wet through the sheets, and changing sheets multiple times per day and then per week. The symptoms sort of started to compound then. So I went to the sort of campus doctor just to sort of see, health services to sort of see what could this be. It must be the flu or something. And yeah, that was the beginning of a sort of, let's see, 6-month, 7-month period of doctors seeing me and sort of passing me around to their colleagues in various medical fields to sort of figure out what this was. It took a long time. So other symptoms developed sort of throughout that. I was losing about 3 or 4 pounds per week. I am about 6'3". And I was the same height back then, but I was closer to 300 pounds back then. I was relatively overweight. At least that's something I had in my mind. I was trying to be healthier and lose weight. But then with this, I started losing. It was literally 3 or 4, sometimes 5 pounds per week. And that's just not, even I knew that I was, happy to see that I was losing weight, but it didn't feel natural. It didn't feel right. Plus all the coughing and sweating. And I had a sort of constant low grade fever of about 99, 99.5. I had the palms of my hands. If you look at the palms of your hands, they're pink, sort of that fleshy, light pink color. And same with the bottoms of your feet. Mine were yellow, whitish yellow, sort of no blood flow out to those areas. And a few more symptoms I'm thinking of, but that I'm maybe just can't remember, but something will prompt me and it'll come back to me. So that's the sort of short list for now of the symptoms. And it ended up being Hodgkin's lymphoma is the type of cancer that I had, which is a cancer of the lymph system and a blood cancer. And so by the time I was diagnosed, I had progressed to the cancer had progressed to stage 3B out of 4. So it was pretty serious by the time they figured out what it was.
So you were diagnosed with this 3B stage of Hodgkin's lymphoma. What was your process of treatment? What did they tell you that they were going to have to put you through to heal you?
Sure, yeah. So it was made clear to me that it was a very standard procedure. And so when they figured out what the disease actually was, they had done that actually had a small surgery to remove a cluster of swollen lymph nodes in my neck that had just sort of developed just then recently. And so when they removed that, they were able to look at it under a microscope, and the doctor said, any medical student could tell you that this is Hodgkin's. It's a very clear image of that. And so here's the protocol for that. It is 6 months basically of chemotherapy. And based on, he's like, this is a surgeon, by the way. He's like, I'm not the cancer doctor, so let me get you sort of connected with the cancer doc. And I remember this vividly. This was one of the few times where I was really sort of glad and impressed with the sort of upfront sort of care that I got in the diagnosis phase. Within a couple of minutes, I was on the phone, the sort of wall-mounted phone, with the head of the oncology cancer center at Temple University. His name is Dr. Bromberg, Michael Bromberg. So this surgeon got me on the phone with him within a couple of minutes, and right then, I had just found out that I had cancer, so this was like a huge sort of devastation. And right then, Dr. Bromberg even said, this has been around for a long time. We know how to treat it, and you are young and relatively healthy otherwise. And so we're going to give you some, I remember how plainly he said it, we're going to give you some medicine and make you feel better. Get rid of this. And so, yes, I now can tell you it was 6 months of outpatient chemotherapy. So I go in for the day and then leave after it took about 7 hours, the treatment. And I did that every other week for 6 months. And you and I have talked about this before. They put you through a whole list of tests and preliminary things to make sure your body can survive cancer, basically. And so they rushed through that, quickly to start the process because it had moved along. So my cancer had progressed so far. I was, like I mentioned, I was a senior in college. And so this was over winter break and then into the spring of 2008. I was diagnosed in February 2008 and attended law school in September 2008. And so that was my first question when the doctor told me about taking this medicine, this chemo, was, in my 21-year-old mind, can I still go to law school? And he said, I think you can. Yeah, I think we can do this. And so that's sort of history. We went through that whole summer was, it was hell. And I was trying to graduate from college and arrange my life in such a way that I was going to take my sort of next steps to law school and had to sort of situate 6 months of chemotherapy within the middle of that. So yeah, lots of fun chemo. And that is the most sarcastic I can ever be because it is the worst.
Absolutely. So as you're going through treatment, tell me, what was the most normal thing you wanted back during the process?
Food. I am that's such an easy question for me. Because I'm such a foodie, and that word I don't think was even invented back then, but I'm someone who loves all types of cuisine. And that was one of the biggest fun parts about moving to Philadelphia for college was that there was just so much culture and different types of people with different types of food. And when you have chemotherapy, everyone reacts differently to chemotherapy, but one of the known sort of common side effects is your loss of your appetite, right? And nausea. And so I would smell food and it would smell really good, or food that I knew was supposed to smell good would smell really horrible. And then even the good smelling stuff, I would try to taste it and would just, you can't keep it down. And so it is just, yeah, food definitely was the thing that to this day, yes, I missed out on. I guess that's probably why I continue to spoil myself so much to this day when I, take myself out to dinner.
So how long was your healing process? Not just physically, but emotionally and mentally and spiritually?
Oh,
And
we're
what,
still in it. Yeah. Sorry.
yeah.
Yeah,
And what,
sorry. Go ahead.
and what's helped you in saying that, what has helped you the most to heal and get through everything, even to this day, you would say?
So I would say, yeah, the healing process is ongoing. So that was 2008 when I was diagnosed, and it's now 2025. And so the thing that helped me most was, it has to be my close friends and family. I'm one of those people that is talkative and sort of outgoing, probably seems like I have a larger circle than I do, or maybe not. But I have, four or five really close friends, and then two younger sisters and my mom really took care of me. I was just talking to my roommate from the time, he's still my friend now. We were kids, 21, 20 years old. And I remember him waking me up at a certain point when I finally was able to get some rest. I was getting chemo at the time, waking me up, coming into my room saying, you have to take this medicine because you didn't take it last night and it needs to be and me just sort of resisting and doing like I would treat like a doctor or a nurse or a family member. And it was like he was my brother at that point. Like, no, I'm doing this because I care about you, and we're getting your medicine and your regimen down, and this is just gonna happen because you need to be going to law school in the fall. So in those moments, I didn't feel like I wanted to do anything, right? Like I was probably 3 or 4 months into chemotherapy at that point, very, very sick, not wanting to get out of bed. And people like that. My little sister is another good example. At the time, she was living in Philadelphia as well. So she lived right down the street from me, and she's a chef by nature and is a trained chef, and would like make food and bring it to my door. And I would get a text message saying, hey, I left a package of, such and such, be it like bland food that she knew I could keep down or something that I was craving. I left that on your stoop, come out and get it. So, so no one takes it or something like that. Little things like that. There's no way I would have gotten through the experience without my friends and family. And I know that's probably the answer everyone says to that question, but it is just so true. And I value them or you and I mentioned this before we started recording, I value that my sort of perspective on life has changed. And so my perspective on my friendships and my close circle has changed as well. And so I value them even more because of that and through that.
What internally changed the most for you since treatment? Spiritually, mentally,
Yeah.
emotionally,
I think,
psychologically?
I think the biggest change since treatment, since 2008, is my perspective. Just so different now. It is expanded now. My perspective has changed on life. You and I sort of touched on this days before, or, a few days ago and this morning. Things that are a big deal to a lot of people aren't a big deal to me. Things that are life and death to a lot of my friends who, and I say this not to be flippant, but look, who haven't been through anything, who've never had a major death in the family or a major illness or what have you, their world is rocked by certain events when they take place, and like in a bad way. And mine isn't. I'm able to give support and advice to my friends during their sort of traumatic times. In fact, I would say, so I'm a lawyer by training, and professionally, it made me a better lawyer going through chemotherapy, because there's no emergency I can't handle. There's nothing I can't disarm and de-escalate, because compared to a death, compared to you better do this or you'll die, we can pretty much work out anything. We can figure things out. And if we can't, we'll be there for each other when the consequences of the failure happen. That's gotta be it for me. It's that perspective.
What advice would you give to friends and family of someone that's battling cancer that may help them to be more supportive, a better caregiver? What would you say to them that would help them?
I would say that's tough. I would say make sure you are centering the person, the patient.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds so obvious. And what I mean by that is when they say something that's rude to you, or that hurts your feelings, or that insults you in some way, even if they did it intentionally, even if they're being an asshole that day, as I'm known to be, right? That person is fighting for their life during that period of time. And so they aren't themselves, and they are relying on you to love them and to care for them, and to, my mom used to say, speak the truth in love. So if you have to say something to someone, it's a life or death argument you're in with someone, or who happens to be receiving chemotherapy, or who happens to be a cancer patient, just speak the truth in love. You don't need to baby them. You don't need to coddle them, right? You don't need to. That is a big stigma that I think a lot of cancer patients and survivors really dislike. I hate that we can't, no one wants to say, they call it the C word, right? It's like, you can just say cancer. It's okay. Like, we don't need that. We need you to be a rock. We need you to be a foundation and a stability and a support. So when anything random happens, because chemo is so random and it's legit just sort of poisoning your body, the responses that your body can come out with from chemotherapy are devastating. It can be devastating. My first chemotherapy treatment, we found out that I was allergic to one of the drugs. And so I had chemotherapy, and then about an hour later, I started having seizures and we were on the way home. And my mom was, freaked out and took me back to the hospital. And turns out I am allergic to one of the 4 ingredients in my chemo cocktail. So I just needed her to be my rock. I needed her to just take care of me no matter what, because I can't. And that is something for especially men, it's a hard thing. No, I'd say for women too. Because especially Black women, y'all are used to taking care of everyone else, whether you want to or like to or not. That is sadly what we put on our women. It's hard to ask for help, but when you have cancer and you are getting chemotherapy, that is the only thing someone can give to you. They can't fix you. They can't do what the doctor can do, but they can make sure that they still treat you like a human person who they love, and who are not ashamed or afraid to talk about this very real thing that is happening in their body.
And lastly, what would you tell someone who is battling cancer right now that would help them to get through this journey?
I think the most important thing to tell someone and reassure them, and I mean this in every sense of the word, is that you are not alone in this. And I don't just mean you have parents and family that can come to, because maybe you don't, right? Some people are diagnosed with cancer and have to go through chemotherapy and they don't have any friends in any family. But you are not alone in the community of people who have battled and are battling cancer and who have kicked cancer's ass, like me. Alice, you and I don't know each other at all, other than you reaching out to me on Blue Sky because you saw that I was a cancer survivor. You and I are in the same community now. We're friends now because we have this shared experience, and we know no one can know what we're feeling and what we felt. So when you ask me what I want cancer patients and survivors to know, is you aren't alone. Even if you feel like you are, you aren't. You can find a way to make and grow a community for yourself that is surrounded by this. Every person knows someone who has had cancer. And so it is sadly that widespread that you just aren't alone. That's it.
And thank you so much for that. That is amazing. And that was what I really just wanted people to hear, your incredible story.
Oh my
I don't know
gosh.
if you guys caught it, but this man has gone to law school while he was battling cancer. So this man is incredible and amazing. And that's why I needed you guys to hear this story. His story can continue even as you battle and long after your battle is complete. And thank you, Johnathan. I'm so appreciative for you coming on the podcast.
Alice, thank you so much for having me. It has been truly an honor to talk to you, and I'm excited to hear how our episode turns out, and I'm excited to see what you get up to in these next little while here.
Well, you guys, that's all the time we have today. I want to thank you all again for listening, and I will see you all get back here next time.
Bye, everyone.